Purpose.
Connection.
Peace.
Fear.
Anger.
Loss.
Loneliness.
Healing.
Adventure.
Freedom.
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 Loneliness. It's not the absence of people, but the absence of connection. Yet, in its quiet, you might just find the whisper of your own soul calling you home.
The first 40 years of my life were really quite lonely. You know, I was just, I'm a very introverted guy, and so my inherent nature is to withdraw into my own self and keep people at a distance.
I lived around a lot of people, but I felt lonely because I didn't connect with them necessarily.
I was kind of a loner for most of my life, really. I kind of bullied when I was a kid, and I just learned to be happy with myself.
Loneliness is the ache that signals something is missing. It's the heart's gentle reminder that we are meant for connection. Connection to ourselves, to one another, and to the deeper, meaningful parts of life.
So I started living in a van and lived in the van, and that made me feel like a failure and a loser. And I'd wrecked my marriage and just bad times. I was at such an emotionally low point that I started seeking out people and seeking out help in different various ways, and my life just turned around, and I attribute the majority of it to living in the van. I found nature super healing, although I was still living in the city. I was, when it got cold, I was cold, and when it was hot, I was hot, and when the wind blew, the van shook, and I really felt a real connection to nature then. I found a lot of healing in living in the van, and that went really well along with healing my whole life, including loneliness.
In my sticks and bricks life, I moved around a lot. I never really felt like one particular place was home. I really had to change up how I viewed this world, believing that there's something greater than me, whether it be the earth or, God, made me really connect with outside myself.
As a nomad, I don't feel the same loneliness. I think because I found a more solid connection with my higher power, and that has led to me being more open to other people.
If we allow it, loneliness can be a bridge, a gateway to a union with something far greater than ourselves. And through connecting deeply with the great mysteries of life, we can learn to connect wholeheartedly with ourselves and with others.
My name is Brian Gifford, and I've been a nomad now for 15 years. And when asked the question about loneliness, I'm trying to think back to those times before I was a nomad. I was living in Denver, and when you first move to any new city, as I had into Denver, it's always hard to meet people at the beginning. A way a friend of mine explained it one time is that sometimes in a city, I've never felt so alone as when I'm surrounded by people. Because in a city, you sometimes just feel very anonymous. You can get by throughout the day being surrounded by people, walking past them, but actually not make any connections. And I think that's something with loneliness, is that's what we're missing, is the connections.
My experience with loneliness before becoming a nomad was really one that arose out of grief and loss, which led to isolation, a literal, physical being alone, but also just a sense of a feeling of loneliness. My experience of loneliness has indeed changed for the better since becoming a nomad. I think in a lot of ways my life's more meaningful, and then I'm able to spend a lot more time doing the things that I want to do that are meaningful to me. My social network has also grown considerably. I have more friends than I've ever had in my life. I was always an introvert, and just the nomad lifestyle just is conducive to meeting a lot of people and people with shared interests and shared values a lot of times. And so that has been really helpful in addressing loneliness. I've also met my wife, Melanie, as a nomad. And so that certainly factors in heavily in addressing loneliness.
I'm Autumn. I've been a nomad for about 2.5 years, and my experience with loneliness has really sort of come in two shades. There was pre-nomad life loneliness, and then loneliness as a nomad on the road. Pre-nomad life, my loneliness was truly a despairing loneliness. For a long time, I took that upon myself, wondering what was wrong with me. And what I can see in hindsight with both life experience and nomad experience is that it really came down to not living the right lifestyle. Because for me, I've dreamed of doing this since I was 17 years old, and I always had a reason or an excuse, even if they were very legitimate, to not pursue this life. I would have lost relationships for it. It wouldn't have been compatible with jobs had I not made really significant life-changing decisions. I think I would have really struggled and suffered in this life.
Okay, pre-nomad life, I didn't know who my next door neighbors were. Post-nomad life, this is very ironic because when I got on the road, I felt all alone. I'd left my old life behind. But suddenly I started drawing people to me. It wasn't as lonely as I thought it was going to be. And this is very important to any newcomers out there. You're about to be welcomed into a tribe, into a community. So please hear me. Isolation is dangerous. I was a mental health writer and researcher, and the studies are loud and clear on this. You know, when we isolate it and get depressed, we don't reach out for help, and then we spin into a descending cycle. And in doubt, reach out. This is absolutely essential. It can save your life. It's really got me out of a lot of binds just by punching through that fear.
Research shows that the health impact of loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
My name is Loretta Pyles, and I am a professor of social work. I am a part-time nomad.
Humans are social creatures, and so through evolution, we survived only because we were part of a community. We cannot survive without others. Loneliness really has many causes. In part, it's just the way our society is structured. We live in these separate homes, right? And we're not sort of as connected as our ancestors were. So there's just something different going on now. Also, it's important to just note that loneliness is normal. It seems to just be a normal part of human existence.
You're going to be lonely when you start, okay? It's just going to happen. And so don't be afraid of it. Get through it. I remember I spent like 4 nights at a Cracker Barrel once because I didn't really know where to go. And it was hard. It was hard, but it was temporary. And I'm so grateful that I didn't give up because there was so many wonderful experiences on the other side of that.
Hi, I'm Julie, and my nomadic story is that in 2017, I decided to nomad. I had been watching Bob Wells' videos, and I took off. I was constantly terrified most of my adult life of relationships and things. Today, 8 years into this journey, I'm not scared of people anymore. And it brings tears to my eyes that I'm as happy as I am. I mean, it's just a blessing.
When I first hit the road, there wasn't a ton of loneliness because there was always an adventure and there was always something to do. Everything was new and interesting. I did have a dog with me, and so I think that kind of helped with loneliness a little bit. But over time, I really started meeting people in the community. I met Bob Wells, you know, within 4 months of hitting the road. There's always people within the community that you can travel with. There's always groups gatherings. There's always, you know, events to go to. And so I really feel like on the road, loneliness has actually gone down quite a bit.
I have felt loneliness on the road, but it is like a whole different experience. It is a shade of loneliness that is sweet. I didn't feel lonely at all until about a year. And then that's what called me to Chloe. And you know what? The despairing, horrible loneliness that I felt pre-nomad life called me to this life. So even though I find loneliness to mostly be an unpleasant experience, I also don't mind it. I view it as almost like a sacred messenger.
I feel less lonely as a nomad, and I believe that is because I have stepped into my purpose. I feel like I found myself. I made a decision that went against the grain, but I felt it was right for me, and I did it anyway. I did it in spite of the negativity. I became more of who I am, who I'm supposed to be. And with that happiness inside of me, I'm friendlier to people. I'm more open to hearing their stories. I'm just not as afraid of people. And there's so much division. And I feel like once we get out here, we find that we have so much in common. And we lose that division. And there's just, I have more friends now than, I don't have enough time to camp with everybody that I've met.
I don't know that I've exactly experienced loneliness. I do get a little homesick from like my friends and stuff. And so usually if I have enough cell signal, I'm always a phone call away. And so are they.
I was on a trip 3 years ago going from New York to New Mexico, and I was going to see my mother after she had been put into a nursing home and with dementia. And when I saw her, she didn't recognize who I was, and it was pretty devastating. I proceeded to head west after that visit and headed on to New Mexico, but it really caused a tremendous spiral in my being, and proceeded to really go into a dark place as far as loneliness goes. And I would call it a dark night of the soul. That's really kind of when I started to really learn about what loneliness was truly about for me, and started to get a little bit of separation from it. At the same time, I befriended it. I got to know, I got curious about it. I got to sort of learn what it was trying to say to me. But at the end of the day, loneliness is just a state of mind. It really is. It's never who I am.
I was pretty much hopeless about ever being fairly normal.
So the nomadic experience, it sounds like, really helped.
Oh, it helped tremendously. I have more friends than I've ever had in my life. I know where they are around the country. There's people all through here that I'm camped with now. These same people, when I was having trouble in Flagstaff 3 years ago, these people all came and camped around in a circle around me until I got better. And that happened for, I think we were there about 4 to 6 weeks. I was having symptoms that I couldn't handle, and they helped.
Wow.
When I get very frightened, and I don't even know what frightened me back then, I have what they finally decided is a conversion disorder. And all of a sudden, I might wake up with it. It might happen within an hour. I can't talk. It comes out garbled, and I cannot get from the brain to my mouth to communicate with people. And these people came to my rescue. I mean, I don't think it's too dramatic to say that, and I can never repay them for that.
I'm curious to learn a little bit about how you connected to these folks. Like, how did you guys meet?
This will be my 8th year in Quartzsite, so they're folks I've met along the way. We're a little community.
Through these stories, we've seen that loneliness is not just an ache, but an invitation. A guide who leads us back to what truly matters. Loneliness, then, it's not an emptiness to be feared. Instead, it's a compass. A wise companion whispering of what the heart truly needs. In the next video in our mental health series, these nomads share both practical and philosophical insights on how to build community. So stay tuned, turn on notifications, and be sure to subscribe. Here is a sneak peek at the next video in the series.
This is a one single tip I would give you. Everyone you meet has something to teach you. And that's how I've lived the last 25 years of my life. Everyone I meet will teach me something.